Good evening and welcome to the Maple Plains City Council meeting. It is Monday, March 26th. It is 7 p.m. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may notice we are missing Councilmember Fay and City Planner Coltis. They are away on spring break, so they are not able to be with us tonight. I am looking for a motion to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill.
Second.
Second by Broda. Any additions or corrections? All in favor of adopting the agenda as is?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, our 2017 audit review with Abdo, Ike, and Myers.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me here this evening. We're going to be going over the results of the 2017 audit. Before I start, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to work with the city, and we will be continuing after this to work on finalizing the audit report. We are waiting for something from the fire relief, but it will not change any of the numbers that we're going to go over this evening. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that. So just a little bit about the results of the audit. So we did issue a clean or an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That means that there was nothing that came to our attention that would lead us to believe that the statements were not reasonably stated. We also look at the system of internal controls during the audit, and like in prior years, we do have two internal control issues noted in the report. One of those is a limited segregation of duties finding. That just means that there's a limited number of staff, not quite enough people for everybody to, be splitting everything up as it should be. We especially include this in the report, so you'll be aware of it when you're looking at payroll, checks, things like that, so you always keep it kind of in the front of your mind. We also include a preparation of financial statement finding in there. That just means that as the auditors, we do prepare the financial statements, but they are the responsibility of the city. During the audit, we also look at Minnesota legal compliance, make sure that everything is in line with state statutes, and we did not find anything this year that would lead us to believe that any of the policies or activities of the city during the year were out of compliance. And so besides those two internal control findings, that there were no other findings in the report. That's very good to see. All right, a little bit about the financials of the city. So for the general fund, the unassigned fund balance did increase this year. This chart illustrates the unassigned fund balance as a percentage of next year's budget. As you can see, that percentage went from 58% last year to 68%. That is a very good positive increase. So that's exactly the direction you want to see that. There's a couple of things that attributed to that increase. When you look at the general fund actual results compared to budget, as you can see, you budgeted for kind of a flat year in fund balance, but what actually happened is it increased $87,000. That was because of revenues. Those came in over budget by about $30,000. There were some unbudgeted grants that came in. And then also expenditures were less than budget by about $18,000. Also, transfers were less than budget, not quite as much as was anticipated was needed to transfer out. And so all of those things combined added up to an increase in fund balance. For general fund revenues, your largest source of revenues is from taxes. And as you can see for the revenues across the board, it was generally kind of a flat year. There weren't too big of variances in any one area. And then for general fund expenditures, there was a little bit of a decrease in that other category that's like culture and rec and debt service, some of the smaller items, but everything else was mainly consistent with where it has been. So overall, a really great year for the general fund. There are just a couple of other funds, special revenue funds of the city that have some that take in some special revenues and account for some special things. So the fire partnership, that fund balance did increase by about $40,000. There was a budgeted increase there about $32,000. So there were some revenues in there that came in a little bit over budget this year. The Economic Development Fund, not too much activity went through there this year. It was primarily just the tax levy of about $27,000 that went into that fund. So overall, a positive year for both of those special revenue funds. And then when you look at the capital projects funds, you can see that for most of them, they did increase. There wasn't too much inactivity this year for capital projects. That downtown development negative, that deficit fund balance, that did go further down this year. So just something that you want to keep an eye on. And I think there's some grant funding that might come in there in the future. For the debt service funds, there was no new debt issued this year, and it's just important to note that for all 4 of those bonds that are out there, these are the governmental portion of the bonds, and the payments for those are going to be fairly consistent over the next 10 years, so not too big of any changes in the near future. All right, so then you get into the water fund. So the water fund, as you can see, the blue line there represents the receipts. So those are the operating receipts that come in for charges for services. And then the green and the gray represents the debt payments and then the operating cost. So when you first look at this graph, it looks a little bit alarming, right? The operating receipts did go down this year. The reason why that happened is there was a change in the billing cycles. And so it was switched from monthly to quarterly. And when you do that, it affects how much receipts you're actually coming in, how much cash is actually coming in. And so in 2018, you're going to see a really large jump up in those operating receipts. So that's just a little bit of a change this year. It doesn't necessarily mean that the water fund is worse off at the end of the year. There's just not quite as many cash receipts that came in. When you look at the cash balance, you also see this reflected. So the cash balance did decrease this year. There was some funds, that gray part, that restricted for capital, a lot of that was used up. There was actually an increase in the unrestricted portion. So this looks like a big jump in cash, but a lot of it was just the restricted part that was used up and the remaining capital cost. When you look at the sewer fund, here's the cash flow, the operating receipts and operating costs, kind of a similar picture to the water fund. But there was also a decrease in the sewer fund operating cost as well. So if it wasn't for that change in billing, you would have seen those operating receipts go above your operating costs for this year. But when you look at the sewer fund cash balance, this is a little bit of a different picture here. We really want to see that minimum target balance, which is 50% of operating costs plus debt service. You really want to see that, underneath your unrestricted cash balance. And so this is just something to watch out for. Really think about what are our sewer rates, how much are we bringing in for our operating revenues, and what are the costs going in there. For the stormwater, you see the receipts and disbursements were fairly equal this year. Nothing too alarming there. And then for the stormwater cash balances, fairly consistent with where they have been in the past. All right, and that is the overview of the 2017 financials. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions for Bonnie?
I do.
Wonderful.
You talked about transfers.
Sure, yep.
And there was, I'm looking at page 42 particularly, that there was a transfer that was supposed to happen. We had budgeted for a transfer of $244,000. We only
Right.
transferred 204, roughly left 40,000
Right.
not transferred. What was the reason why we wouldn't have transferred to those funds? Whether that's a question for you or Bobby, I don't
Right.
know.
I think it was a lot of the transfers that come out of the general fund, they're to support operations and pay back some capital costs that were incurred in prior years. And that wasn't needed for this year. So not quite as much was needed to come out of the general fund as originally thought. So I think about 100 and, right, Bobby? Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I mean, that could be the possibility there. That's it's one of those things where the transfer out, just kind of going over it, I would have to lean towards Bonnie. I don't have the exact answer of what that is off the top of my head right now. What I can tell you is that transfer outs don't affect our levies or our budgets anyway in terms in that it's just it wouldn't affect our levy. We levy the transfer out just adds on to like the general fund to show that. So that it's not like we taxed an extra 40,000 this last year and now we're not using that. That's not the case. So, yeah. But
Okay. And then the other chart, and you had it at kind of the beginning
Sure.
of your presentation, the 68.1%.
Yes,
Which I think
yeah.
to anybody watching this is a good number, particularly when we're going to go out and bond.
Right.
And I remember this was, I don't know, 5 years ago or so, that we had a little higher level. We brought it back down. I think bringing it back up a little is probably a good prudent step. So I'm not concerned. We were down in the high 50s, shooting for a target
Right.
of 60. Now, because of some good work on staff's part, we're back up into the mid to high 60s, which probably isn't inappropriate.
Right. No, and that's a great point because, you know, a lot of times if you stay in those high 60s, then you have to think about, well, why am I keeping such high levels of reserves when I could be using these things for the betterment of the community? And so because you see this trend here where it goes, you know, down a little bit and then creeps back up, then you're thinking, okay, well, we have a plan in place where we know that our fund balance isn't going to dip below a certain point. So I wouldn't say that is an unnecessary fund balance to have. It's a good fund balance to have in place, especially when you're thinking about bonding.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions for Bonnie? All right.
Great.
Thank you very much for being
Well,
here.
yes,
And
thank you so much for having me. And there are hard copies, bound copies of the audit report here if anybody wants to take one home. So,
perfect.
all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Next item of business this evening is our consent agenda. Looking for a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill.
Second.
Second by DeLuca. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Administrative reports. We'll start with our city engineer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In your packet is our monthly engineering report, and much of our time this last month was working on the 2018 street and utility improvements and the advertising and bidding and answering questions. And so we'll have that item on your agenda for later tonight on the bid results. Otherwise, we did forward some details for the Elam property along Baker Park Road and other miscellaneous items with our monthly report and some information for staff on the comp plan. But I can answer any questions on our monthly report at this time.
Any questions for Dan? All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Our next report will be our city planner, who is not here tonight, so our city administrator will be giving that.
thank you, Mayor and City Council. Mark has been busy, which is always a good thing. Couple of things. He's attended some staff meetings, planning commission meeting to review some proposed ordinances. Also, we had a checkup. There's a midpoint checkup with the Med Council pertaining to our comprehensive plan. So that meeting was attended, went through some things of where we're at with our comprehensive plan, when we expect to finish everything. We still are on that target of finishing up this fall, that's good. So that's a good deal there with the Med Council. Other than that, working a variety of different tasks, mainly pertaining to development opportunities and then also the comprehensive plan in itself, which is kind of the main focus there. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions pertaining to the planning report.
Any questions? All right. Hearing none, we will move on to West Hennepin Public Safety. Chief Kraus.
Honorable Mayor and council members, in your packet is the February 2018 activity report for West Hennepin Public Safety. In the month of February, we have, up through the month of February, have 1,051 incidents. In the month of February, 199 of them were in Maple Plain and 319 were in Independence. Just to highlight a few cases for you, February 2nd, we had a second-degree DWI, County Road 6 and Copeland Road in Independence at 4:27 a.m. We were dispatched to a vehicle in the ditch call, and that's a very rural part of our communities, and the person said they hit some ice and slid off the road, but amazingly we didn't find any ice in that area, and they were arrested for DWI and later tested a .11. They were released pending charges. February 4th, 1400 block of 3 Oaks Avenue. We get this complaint fairly often. Someone's concerned for the neighbor's dog outside, and it was a little cold that night, so they said the dog didn't have any water. We went over and found that the dog did have fresh water, does have a heater coil in the water dish, and had hay and insulation in it, so no issues were found. And we try to reiterate that to the complainant that the dog is fine. February 9th, 6100 block County Road 6, during the day, we had a burglary that we actually was in progress that we later arrested that day over in Watertown. What ended up happening is a person stopped at the residence saying they wanted to buy some tires kind of on the outside of the person's house. The female party of the residence said, yeah, that's fine, and went back inside to take a shower. And when she came out, she saw that the person actually had pulled in behind their garage, opened their garage, and started unloading a bunch of stuff, and took off, took a lot of copper and kind of metal stuff, and left. And she was able to get a license plate. She called us. We did some work in Carver County, meeting with their deputies. They knew exactly who the person was, did their just looked them up on Facebook, found out who their girlfriend was, found out where they lived. Hour later, we were able to get the person in custody and taken to jail on the charges of third-degree burglary. It was a great case by our department and by the reporting party to get the information and call right away, and charges are pending on that case. February 9th, 1800 Budd Avenue in Maple Plain, we were called to a lockout, which is not uncommon. What's kind of interesting about this one is after we did the lockout for the friend of the registered owner of the vehicle, we opened the door, and amazingly the strong odor of marijuana comes out of the vehicle, and they then admitted that there is marijuana in the car, and it was taken as evidence, and charges are pending on that as well. February 12th, Highway 12 and Baker Park Road seems to be an area where we're getting a lot of rear-end crashes as of late. I think people are just, it's really heavy backed up traffic, not paying attention, and we're getting a lot of rear end crashes in that area. This particular case, the traffic was eastbound in the afternoon. They weren't paying attention, rear-ended the person in front of them, and caused a little bit of pain to that driver in their back and neck area, and they refused transport. But the driver who caused the crash was cited for driving without due care. Another one at Highway 12 and Baker Park Road on February 20th. This particular case, somebody was westbound on Highway 12 and going to turn north on Baker Park Road, kind of to go to the Holiday subway area. And as soon as they got into the turn lane, traffic kind of closes up, fills that gap, and then the person decided they didn't want to turn right anymore, and they moved left and didn't realize it wasn't open and ran into the side of the cars next to them, and that person was cited for illegal lane change. We did have a theft on February 20th, 1500 block of Budd Avenue. The owner reported that their trunk lid was open of their truck, and the items were missing between February 18th and 19th. It was unlocked at the time, and no forced entry was used. This case is pending. On February 23rd, we had an unwanted person in the 5300 block of Highway 12 about 11:39 p.m. In Maple Plain. It was an unwanted at the motel, and kind of both parties had a falling out with each other. There was no assault, there was no physical altercation, but they just couldn't get along anymore. They didn't have any money, they didn't have anywhere to go, so we ended up, as our police department, gave them a few dollars out of our petty cash to help them get back to their home in Minneapolis, and then one of our reserves transported the party to that location. But on the way, unfortunately, the person started making suicidal comments, stated that they were depressed, so we had to pull over, and Golden Valley Police Department assisted our reserve officer with putting a hold on that person and taking them to the hospital. And that would be kind of it for the ones that I highlighted. It's been a busy month, February. Weather's still maintained being fairly cold for us, and we'll continue to work hard. And you can see in the activity reports, we're fairly active on proactive police work that we do around town, and we'll keep working at it. But if you have any questions, I can answer for February. If there's one I didn't get that you'd like to talk about, be happy to answer that.
Any questions for Chief?
No, just a comment, Gary. You highlighted 5 or 6 or 8 different things that certainly help our public safety, but I think there's also a number of these, if people will read through the packet, that I really call they're the service part of what
Yeah.
you do. And sometimes we don't highlight enough of the stuff that police do that isn't catching somebody doing something bad, but helping. And there are a number of those that are in the report.
Correct.
And I think we need to remember that you do a good job on those.
Yeah, I think there was a elderly couple in there that was very cold, and
Yep.
I think our officer gave him a ride to Delano.
Well,
That's
and
a-
using your own petty cash to help.
Yeah, I mean, the officers, I remember sending me an email on that, and I'm like, no, that's good common sense judgment of they're down and out, and sometimes you have to, try to help them and get them to where they need to be.
Well, and I was focusing on one with the runaway, where,
Yeah.
where the police sat and chatted with the young man. And those are life-changing discussions, so.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next, we'll have our Public Works report by our city administrator.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Some things that Public Works have stayed busy with in the month of March is snow plowing. Unfortunately, there was some snow plowing in March. We typically wait a little bit to do pothole repairs, but we had one on Bryant that was just atrocious. So we had to put some cold mix in there. Typically, we like to wait till we get those road restrictions off to really get the frost out of the ground to really tackle potholes. But this one warranted attention early. So the ice rink closed, and the warming house at Rainbow, the bathrooms are still open, but just kind of an announcement there. Otherwise, Public Works has been working with Stantec, which is Dan Boyum's colleague at Stantec, Ryan Capel, who works there, doing some work on the water treatment plant. Also had Vesco go out and repair some chlorine lines there, and exhaust vent control work that has been happening. Otherwise, there was some servicing that was done on their Cat 420D loader. Matt and Harry also attended their annual MRWA, which is water state training requirements. So they need to attend that to be licensed to treat water, and there's sewer licensing there as well. They do some work on some of the lift stations and whatnot. And then also, unfortunately, last Friday morning, so this last week on Friday morning, there was a water main break that happened at Gladview and Drake Street. So that was really good work by Public Works. They got the emergency dig out right away in the morning. It was taken care of in really fast time. It was supposed to take 4 to 6 hours. They got it done in about 3, all repaired. Staff did use Code Red to notify the residents in that area that you may be without water, and here's your time frame for that. So all in all, good work by Public Works for the month of March, especially with that water main break. So that went very well. Didn't get really much contact at City Hall at all. So that usually means we're doing a pretty good job with that kind of stuff. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions pertaining to Public Works.
No questions, but just a good reminder for all our residents to sign up for Code Red, if you're not already. All right, any other questions, comments, questions? All right, next we'll have your report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Some things that have been going on with administration is we're continuing to work on some potential development opportunities throughout the city, and good things are happening there. We're going to have a busy May Planning Commission on the horizon, so that's good news. As you notice, there's a couple more ordinances on the agenda for this month. We had 3 last month, so We're amending many city ordinances and expect more coming your way. So we've got that. Also, I've seen a sneak preview of the new city website, and I will say that this thing's pretty cool. So it's a great improvement from where we're at with our current website. It's really a pretty neat deal. So look for that to be completed by the end of April. We should be going live with that. Obviously, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the 2040 comprehensive plan. We've been organizing meetings with the city events committee for this summer's events. Look in the paper, we'll throw that on the community calendar up there, as well as our own advertising ways. We've had some communication with property owners regarding trees specifically for the 2018 street and utility project, and that went really well. That was something that it was a challenging process to go through with all the trees in the right of way, but good positive results from the residents, so that worked out really well. And other than that, I mean, we've got our spring 2018 newsletter, so utility bills will be due at the end of April. So look for that coming out soon, but that's it from the city administration report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right. With that, I'm looking for a motion to receive all of our administrative reports this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Broda, second by DeLuca. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Next, we'll move on to new business. We'll begin with ordinance number 293, amending the dimension requirements for 90-degree parking stalls.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. This one I'll try to keep very short and sweet. It's really easy to describe. So as you can see, there are a number of different requirements for parking stalls and drive aisle widths within the city. It depends on the zoning, what kind of use the building's going to have. That can dictate parking requirements. So one thing that we have noticed over the last few years is that we've had 3 different variances pertaining to parking lot depth if there's an overhang. And currently we require 20 feet in depth. And looking at that and looking at the variances that we have approved in the last 3 years that have we've approved at 18 feet, we felt it was appropriate for staff to bring an amendment to that specific ordinance saying that parking space depth with that overhang would move from 20 feet to 18 feet. And then coinciding with that, we've had a drive aisle width of 25 feet, that to be shrunk down to 24 feet for a drive aisle width. And this is something that the Planning Commission did look at as well, and they recommended approval of. Mark did an excellent job of sharing kind of the industry standards of are we in line with what the industry is. And that helps only with future development and whatnot. So this ordinance amendment specifically is tackling parking space depth with that overhang from 20 feet to 18 feet, and then also the drive aisle width from 25 feet to 24 feet. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions pertaining to this ordinance.
And just to be clear, this would be only for future development. It wouldn't require any restructuring of anything that's
No one
currently in
else,
place.
any operating business in town operating.
They'd be grandfathered in
Yep.
whatever they have right now.
Yep,
Yeah.
there's nothing, well, it's less restrictive.
Right, yeah,
So,
but,
yeah, no changes would have to be made, that's correct. Yep.
Madam Mayor, I move we approve ordinance 293, amending the dimension requirements for 90-degree parking stalls as outlined.
Okay, there's a motion on the table by Councilmember DeLuca. Looking for a second.
I second.
Second by Broda, and Councilmember Broda, since this is an ordinance, it will be a roll call vote.
Councilmember Cahill.
Aye.
Councilmember DeLuca.
Aye.
Mayor Moskowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Broda.
Aye.
The ayes have it 4-0 with Councilmember Fay absent.
Next item of business is ordinance 294, an ordinance making new wireless support structures for smaller wireless facilities, a conditional use in all residential zoned areas. Turn that over to staff.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'm going to touch on this briefly, and then also, John, feel free to jump in if need be. So part of the legislative movement that happened last season was a small cell wireless proposal that was passed that allows cell phone companies to erect on these kind of small wireless boxes that they can attach to existing poles in the ground. What this specific ordinance is talking about is there is a condition within that legislation that talks about residentially zoned areas and gives cities the ability to make a conditional use process available for these companies, specifically only to residential use. So that's kind of the premise of what this is talking about. Is it's very hard for us to deny this, but at least there's a process where we can kind of have a little bit more say from the Planning Commission and City Council how these small cell wireless boxes look. That's kind of the leeway that we have with this legislation that was passed. So this just kind of outlines that we reserve the right as a city to have a conditional use permit process for any small cell wireless that would be possibly installed in a residentially zoned area. That's really it, the gist of it there. But outside of that, if it's outside of the residentially zoned area, we really don't have much ability to do a whole lot there. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions pertaining to Ordinance 294.
Hearing no questions, I'm looking for, sorry.
I did.
Sorry,
I'm a
Councilmember
little
DeLuca.
slow. Bobby, in the packet, there's a bunch of sections that are now crossed out
Mm-hmm.
because of this. Can you just explain, like, the home occupancy section and the setback? I mean, there's a few things that didn't make sense to me.
Sure, I think this is outlining what the small cell wireless can do is pertaining to the conditional use permit.
Yeah, Planner and I had a discussion about this too, and I think Mark had added the changes that you're referencing, Councilmember DeLuca, primarily just sort of housekeeping, cleaning up while we're doing this anyway. The home occupation, as you can see, the language struck number 5, home occupations as defined in 153.007 by conditional use permit only. It was actually listed under the permitted use section, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So we figured, well, we're adding this small cell condition, we would remove that and put it under conditional use where it belongs. So the changes that you see with the struck language are really just a little bit of reorganization.
No, and I thought that might be the case. I just,
Sure.
since we hadn't even talked about those other things,
Yep.
let's just be transparent that we're cleaning up stuff at the same time.
Sure, and just so that city council's aware too, in our next coming business meeting, we will be proposing a whole new right-of-way chapter that will be cleaning up and including more on small cell wireless. That'll be dealing with outside of just the residentially zoned areas. So this is kind of the zoning piece of it from a small cell area, and then next month with our right-of-way chapter, we'll kind of deal with the remaining pieces of it. So, but yes, there are some things in here that are being cleaned up from that residentially zoned area.
Thank you for pointing that out. Any other questions or comments? All right. With that, then, I'm looking for a motion to approve Ordinance 294.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill,
Second.
second by Broda. And because it is an ordinance, we'll have a roll call vote again.
Councilmember DeLuca,
Aye.
Mayor Moskowski,
Aye.
Councilmember Broda,
Aye.
Councilmember Cahill.
Aye.
The ayes have it 4-0 with Councilmember Fay absent.
All right. Our next item of business is Resolution 18-0326-01, accepting bid for 2018 street reconstruction project.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Earlier today, staff, as well as there was a representative from the council attended also the bid opening where we had 9 bidders, so a very good showing for the city. And We had very good bids in the fact that the low bid, Northdale Construction Company, came in at a total base bid of $1,446,133.38. And we've kind of updated the resolution. If you recall in your packet, we had left blank some of the items because the bids weren't opened yet. So the updated resolution is on your desk, as well as the bid tab that gives results of the 9 bidders, and then a cover letter from our office. And so, yeah, Northdale Construction does this type of work in a variety of different communities. I know in a brief discussion with them today, they said, this project fit well into their schedule. I think we have a fall completion, and they're anticipating starting in June. And we'll get more details on that if the council awards it to them and when we have the pre-construction meeting. But they said they want it to be dry when they start in, and so June usually is better than April and May, and so that's their tentative schedule at this time. As far as the alternate bid number 1, that's if you recall, that was pricing to run drain tile from the right-of-way drain tile all the way up to property owners on Parkview. And the city staff will be reviewing that with those property owners. The contractor is fine with the city awarding on the total base bid. And if you get feedback from those property owners that they do want to have the contractor do that work, then we can add that back in at that time. So with that being said, yeah, we are very happy with the results. They did come in less than what we had estimated, so that's a good thing, and we can answer any questions at this time from the council.
It's a very good thing. I like these numbers.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the bonding costs, and I apologize if I'm asking this too soon. But there's the 25% indirect costs. Can you give an example of what those would be?
Yeah, so indirect costs are typically if there's any, your legal costs, not that they're very high on reviewing the contracts. There's engineering costs. There's the testing costs for material testing and compaction testing through the project. There's kind of some of the assessment related costs. So we kind of throw all those in there. That's an estimate.
Okay.
I think historically it comes in less than that, but I think when the city's bonding, they try to be on the safer side, and then there's times when you at the end of your project you still have some funds left, and then you use them for other projects.
So it's essentially everything that the bidder's not doing in the project. You can
Correct.
say that way. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Dan, have you had some good experience with Northdale?
Yes, yeah. I haven't worked with them recently, but in the past they tend to do a lot of utility work on new developments, and they've bid a lot of our projects over the last few years, but just haven't been the low bidder. And the contractor said they had it worked good in their schedule, and they have some good locations to bring some of the common borrow that are very close, so that helped and was reflected in their bid.
Good.
Hearing no other questions, then I'm looking for a motion to accept the resolution 18-0326-01, accepting the bid from Northdale Construction Company for the 2018 street reconstruction project.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember DeLuca.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Broda. And this is a resolution, so it'll be a roll call vote again.
Mayor Moskowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Broda.
Aye.
Councilmember Cahill.
Aye.
Councilmember DeLuca.
Aye.
The ayes have it 4-0 with Councilmember Fay absent.
Thank you. Next item of business is another resolution, Resolution 18-0326-02. Resolution providing for the sale of the General Obligation Improvement Bond Series 2018A.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. What you have in front of you is a resolution that's authorizing the city to use Ellers as our financial assistant in issuing these bonds. So kind of review, we just awarded a contract to the low bidder. Now staff's looking for permission to go get the money for this project. That's kind of in simpler terms of how this is looked at. So we would need to do a number. There's kind of a schedule laid out. The next big thing that would be coming up if staff were to have permission to do this is we would be looking at doing a kind of a financial health bonding call that would happen in the April 9th to 16th in that time frame. And then on the 23rd of April, they'll be considering proposals for awarding the sale of the bonds, and hopefully everything's finalized kind of by mid-May when we would have the funds. So that's good, considering if the project were to begin in June, we would have the funds to pay the contractor when they're working. So that's important. But this resolution is really just looking at if staff has the permission to go out and bond for the money. Now, when I talk the dollar amount, we don't have the exact to the dollar amount. So that's what this sheet is in front of you. It's the 2018 street and utility improvements bonding cost review. So right now the total with the indirect costs, and this is for the elements that would include Howard and Independence, street reconstruction, water replacement, water line replacement, sanitary sewer, and stormwater, and the water line along Highway 12 that we need to replace for, by the water treatment plant. And then also the work that we were looking at doing on Parkview Road and Maple Ridge Drive. So all that work is thrown in there with that $1,898,100. I'm asking some flexibility from City Council to move that bonding total up to about $1,950,000. There's one element that isn't added in here, and that's the actual bonding costs. So the cost that Ellers charges to go out for bond. So I'm looking for a ceiling around that 1.950 million, $1,950,000 to move forward with that and use Ellers to go out for bond for this project. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know that was a little complicated.
Bobby, when included in this is, and I know you probably haven't split these apart yet, but the approximately $200,000 for that water main piece of it.
Yep, that's included in this total.
I understood, though, that we had bond dollars
Correct.
remaining from the last project.
Correct.
We were going to use it, those. Wouldn't that then imply you wouldn't need 1.9?
I mean,
You only need 1.7.
you could. There's no harm in waiting either way on that because you have that money, so you could pay it off right away. The bonding cost doesn't change by the amount. There's a fixed fee cost to bond. You certainly can do that. There is money available to pay for that water line element, and that may be, that's certainly an option that the council has. It's not necessarily, you have to make that discussion tonight. We could bond for this amount and then pay off that part of it using those funds right away. That is allowed to do. So it's, in that way, we're still moving forward on this deal, and we're not handcuffing
makes
ourselves in any way there.
And I think we just want to be really clear to the residents that the folks that are on the road that are being improved are not going to be assessed for any of the work on those other projects.
Correct. So when we're looking at specifically Howard and Independence, which unfortunately when we do street reconstruction projects, the cost is at a level where we do have to look at individual property assessments. This is good news for those residents because this number came in $400,000 less than what we assumed. This the low base bid, the $1,446,133.38. That was $400,000 less than what we anticipated, and the overall bonding cost we were anticipating over $2.4 million, and we're under $2 million. So this was a good day in terms of the competition of those bids. What I'm saying is that will help when it comes to when we're gathering assessment numbers, if the project costs less, ultimately at the end of the day, residents would be assessed less. So this is good in that. And the other projects have absolutely, that is not part of an assessment program at all. Those are individual elements.
Well, admittedly, I know nothing about bond advisement, so I don't know anything about Eller's company. Are they kind of the only option around for this, or have you had?
There's a couple of different options that you can go with. Historically, the city, I believe, for every bond I think the city's ever released, we've gone with Eller's.
Okay, and are their rates comparable to other
Yep.
places? Okay.
Yeah,
That's all I was
there's
wondering.
other companies that will do some bonding. Eller's is very reputable.
Okay.
So it's that's not necessarily a concern from that way.
All
So,
right. Thank you.
yeah.
Good discussion, good things to point out. Any other discussion or questions? All right, with that, I am looking for a motion to approve Resolution 18-0326-2 with the resolution providing for the sale of general obligation improvement bond series.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill.
And I second with the assumption that that's for the 1,950 that you're asking for.
Yep.
Okay, that's my
Correct.
So there's some flexibility.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, any further discussion? All right, second, Rhoda, we'll take a roll call vote again.
Councilmember Rhoda.
Aye.
Sorry. Councilmember Cahill.
Aye.
Councilmember DeLuca.
Aye.
Mayor Moskowski.
Aye.
The ayes have it 4-0 with Councilmember Fay absent.
All right. And last item of new business is Resolution -18-0326-03, authorizing the city to enter into a credit enhancement program agreement with the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. What this agreement is, this resolution in front of you is it's a wonderful thing that cities have been just allowed to do over the last 10 years or so. When we bond, the city has a AA rating, is our credit rating as a city, which is a very good rating. With the size of what Maple Plain is, that's pretty close to about as good as we're going to get. That's really good news. This credit enhancement program with the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority, we've used this in the past, and we're looking to use it again, which is the state of Minnesota has a AA+ credit rating. And so what we can do legally as a city is we can enter in an agreement with the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority that allows us to use their AA+ credit rating. What does that mean? It means that when we do go out for this bond, we get lower interest rates, which is extremely beneficial to the city and saves us some money by doing that. So that's a good thing. The only stipulation, the only stipulation that the city really has to do is we have to make payments a little bit earlier because it has to go through their process and then it goes to where it needs to be. Because if there was some reason where the city couldn't pay for it, then the state would step in and pay for it. But that's not an issue. But yeah, so this is a really good deal where we entered into this agreement that just says we'll pay a little bit earlier and we get to use the state's AA+ bond rating system. So that's what this is all about here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions pertaining to that.
So is it essentially like co-signing a loan? Like they're verifying we'll pay, and if we don't, they do?
Correct.
Okay.
It's the best way I like to think about this is that a financial tool that cities have available to is we have a AA bonded system.
Mhm.
Private businesses that are doing expansion projects could do this with us.
Oh, okay.
So they could come to us and say, I'm going to put on a $5 million expansion. Can I just take I like to call it your credit card, credit rating card. So can I take your AA card, and if they default, it doesn't affect us. That's on them, but that's kind of what we can do with the state then,
Mhm.
given that we're a smaller city, and AA is about as good as we can get. And since they're AA+, we can use theirs to help us out favorably.
And as long as the state of Minnesota's bond doesn't decrease
Drop.
below
Correct.
a AA+, we're okay.
Correct. I would say that given the state's money in reserves right now, I feel confident we're in good shape financially.
And to clarify, beyond the $500 application fee, there's no other financial commitment for this?
No, that's
Okay.
it. That's it.
Do you have an idea of what kind of
No.
percentage savings you'd be getting?
It'll be more than $500, but other than that,
Yeah.
it'll be good.
Okay.
I can't speculate just because I don't know what
Sure, that's
we'll
fine.
get on.
I just didn't know if there's some
and
kind of.
There's a wide range.
Yeah.
I think we have some bonds that I think are closer to 4%. I know the last one that we did was 2.36%.
Okay.
Which I would expect would be a little bit higher just because the economy's recovered a little bit. I think that'll be a higher interest rate, but hopefully low. So,
Okay. Well, I move we approve resolution 18-0326-03.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote. Sorry.
Councilmember Kale.
Aye.
Councilmember DeLuca.
Aye.
Mayor Moskowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Broda.
Aye.
The ayes have it 4-0 with Councilmember Fay absent.
Thank you. All right, moving on, our next item of business is council reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Broda.
Just one item to touch on is this Saturday is the Easter egg hunt at Northside Park, and conditions look favorable. Everything's going to be below freezing, which is what we want this year. So everything will stay crispy. And we have 13,000 eggs packed and ready to go, and expecting a really big crowd. So good write-up in the newspaper this weekend, and thank you for advertising that on the city sign. And looking forward to a fun day. So Saturday at 10:30, Northside Park.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Maple Plain Community Church again for hosting that. It's an annual event that people have come to look forward to. Councilmember Cahill.
Planning Commission met earlier this week, and we just discussed the existing design guidelines and recognized the work that was done before, and Commission pretty much confirmed that's what we want.
Councilmember DeLuca.
No report.
All right. I was able to attend the Highway 12 Safety Coalition meeting this past month along with the chief. At this point, I don't think we really have anything to bring back, but we are meeting every other month. Councilmember Fay and I have been attending the Orno Rotary. It has been a great group to be a part of and to network with. And the Orno Rotary is sponsoring in conjunction with the city Party in the Park on Saturday, June 2nd here in Northside Park. And this will be a fundraiser for our Veterans Memorial. So just mark your calendars, save the date, and more info to come. 2 bands are already confirmed, the Amy Austin Band and Red Dot Garage. So we're looking forward to a fun evening in our city and hope many of you will be able to attend. I was also able to attend the Northwest Hennepin League of Municipalities. We're all working on our comp plans and keeping busy, and it's a good time of networking and sharing ideas and resources. And was also able to attend the West Hennepin Chamber of Commerce. So it's been a busy month. All right. Any other business? All right. Seeing no visitors to be heard.
I move to adjourn.
Moved by Councilmember DeLuca.
A second.
Second by Rhoda. All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned at 7:54.